There was a vice president of AT&T in 1909 who said that he thought the public mind was the chief danger to the company.
Corporation, exactly. The general public might have funny ideas about corporate control. For example, you know, people who really believe in democracy, people who take 18th century values seriously, people who really might merit the term conservatives, that much abused term, are against concentration of power. They remember that after all, the doctrines of the Enlightenment held that individuals should be free from the coercion of concentrated power. Now, the kind of concentrated power that they were thinking about was the church and the state and the feudal system and so on. And you could sort of imagine a population of relatively equal people, at least equal white male property owners, who would be not controlled by those private powers. But in the subsequent period, a new form of power developed, namely corporations, with highly concentrated power over decision-making in economic life. That is, control over what's produced, what's distributed, what's invested, and so on and so forth, is very narrowly concentrated.
So this is why the vice president of a large corporation would say the public mind is the chief
public mind
thing.
might have funny ideas about democracy, which say that we should not be forced simply to rent ourselves to the people who own the country, and own its institutions. Rather, we should play a role in determining what those institutions do. That's democracy. If we were to move towards democracy, and I think democracy even in the 18th century sense, we would say that there should be no maldistribution of power in determining what's produced, what's distributed, what's invested, and so on. Rather, that should be that's a problem for the entire community. In fact, there are, in my own personal view, unless we move in that direction, human society probably isn't going to survive.
Why?
Well, we now face the most awesome problems of human history, problems such as the likelihood of nuclear conflict, either among the superpowers or through proliferation, the destruction of a fragile environment, which finally we're beginning to recognize that was obvious decades ago that we're heading for disaster. Other problems of this nature, they're of a level of seriousness that they never were in the past.
But why do you think more participation by the public, more democracy is the answer?
Because, well, more democracy is a value in itself. So quite apart from, because democracy is a value, it doesn't have to be defended any more than freedom has to be defended. That's just, it's an essential feature of human nature that people should be free, they should be able to participate, they should be uncoerced, and so on.
So
these are values in themselves.
Right. Why do you think, if we go that route?
Because I think that that's the only hope that I can see, that other values will come to the fore. I mean, if the society is based on control by private wealth, it will reflect the values that it in fact does reflect. The value that the only real human property is the desire is greed, and the desire to maximize personal gain at the expense of others. Now, any society, maybe a small society based on that principle is ugly, but it can survive. A global society based on that principle is headed for massive destruction, and that's what we are. We have to have a mode of social organization that reflects other values that I think are inherent in human nature that people recognize.
And that would be, I want to see exactly what you mean.
I mean, what are human beings? I mean, in your family, for example, it's not the case that in the family every person tries to maximize personal gain at the expense of others, or if they do, it's kind of pathological. It's not the case that if you and I are, say, walking down the street and we see a child eating a piece of candy and we see that nobody's around, and we happen to be hungry, we don't steal it. If we did that, we would be pathological. I mean, the idea of care for others and concern for other people's needs and concern for a fragile environment that must sustain future generations, all of these things are part of human nature. These are elements of human nature that are suppressed in a social and cultural system which is designed to maximize personal gain. And I think we must try to overcome that suppression, and that's in fact what democracy could bring about. It could lead to the expression of other human needs and values which tend to be suppressed under the institutional structure of a system of private power and private profit.